Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest edition of the Fireside with Founders and Leaders podcast. Today, I am delighted to be joined by James Ferguson, aka Fergo, who has worked at companies as a design leader, companies including Skyscanner, Whereby, and he's now currently VP of Design at OVO, the energy company. So we have a really great conversation all about his leadership tips, things that people can be doing to help themselves to try and find new work in this new world that we're working in, especially with AI being so prominent. Looking at what he's been doing to level up in terms of being AI first and driven by the new products that are out there that can really help people to do their jobs and really help to elevate designers in the world that we live in. So we talk about all about that, some really great tips and hints, loads and loads of other juicy stuff. So I'm just going to let you get straight into it and enjoy. Hello, Fergo. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in all the way from sunny Brighton.
Yes, I mean, it is actually a little bit sunny at the moment. I mean, given the weather we've had at the start of this year. So, yeah, it's dry at least. So, yeah, nice to be here.
Happy days. Well,
Yeah,
really, really good to meet you
yeah,
sort of finally. So we've been talking for a little while now.
yeah.
We've got some interesting topics related to the design industry, leadership in the design industry, something that's pretty close to your heart and your career, as people will find out.
Yeah.
But so let's tuck into that. So tell us a bit more about sort of you, your career, how you got to where you are today, and how it all started.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Fergo. I'm currently leading design at OVO Energy. And I spent like the last 20 years or so in various kind of design leadership roles. From kind of B2B SaaS through to kind of travel, and a bunch of kind of other industries in there. And I think for me, like the one constant is that I've kind of always joined companies and teams at different levels of inflection points, whether
Mhm.
that's a big technology shift, whether that's a kind of cost transformation or kind of otherwise. And I think that's probably one of the things that has stuck with me throughout my career is that kind of transformation angle, and that kind of leading through shifts, whether that was back in the day around the shift to mobile,
Yeah.
or at the moment like the shift into AI, which no doubt we'll end up talking more about as well. So yeah, that's something that I guess is always kind of stayed with me.
There've been lots of shifts, right,
Yeah,
over the years. So you
yeah.
talked about the shift to mobile was probably I say the original one, actually the shift to just online.
Yeah, exactly.
First of all, the
Moving from
internet.
print. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my first job was at a design agency where we were going through that shift. Like I joined in the digital space, but many people were transitioning
Yeah.
from print into digital at the time where Flash was the cool thing. So yeah,
Flash, for all the kids that don't know,
I
doesn't
know.
exist anymore, but it used to be the thing that
It
was
did.
there.
It did. I saw a post literally yesterday about Flash and like, oh, like I love that. It did have a
It
place
was
for me.
good, it was
Yeah.
good. Although it used to crash quite a lot,
Oh
I
yeah.
seem to remember.
Yeah.
So lots of frustrations of, like, "Why isn't this working? It
Yeah.
should be." But
Exactly.
there we go. So lots of transitions. So
Yeah.
internet, mobile, what other things have you seen sort of, transitioning? You mentioned obviously AI, which we'll get into, of course, but
Sure. I mean, even that shift into kind of more like specialist design roles, and then I guess as we're seeing kind of things almost kind of come back together as well, like we kind of seem to split from having a designer that did absolutely everything into individual roles for things and specialisms, and now we're seeing, I guess, the rise of the generalist again, kind of coming back. And I think
mm,
again the AI piece is only amplifying some of that. I think for me the other kind of shifts has been around like ways of working, like into your kind of cross-functional teams, like the idea of this kind of squad and tribe model that kind of really, I guess, kind of came from that kind of Spotify type way of working,
mm.
is now the standard. But I mean, if we think back, it wasn't the way. We had centralized teams and massive handoff between disciplines. So yeah, I guess lots of different types of shifts from tooling through to kind of more cultural pieces through to kind of how we work with each other. So yeah, massive.
Nice. There's been lots of changes, you say, like, in terms of the way people work. I think I can't remember where I saw it or who I spoke to, but you talked about the Spotify way of
Yeah.
working, and they started with that. But by the time everyone, I think, adopted it,
Oh
They
yeah.
were no longer working in the Spotify way was the
No, and
irony of it
it's
all.
still called that, isn't it? You still
Yeah.
refer to it as that, and it's basically what was 2 blog posts and a couple of videos.
Yeah.
And I still remember like the hand-drawn videos that they used as part of it, and it's like, well, yeah, everyone just believed that as gospel, and I think everyone's went on their own journey of what does that actually mean, and what
Yeah.
does this mean for our business, and like how do you adapt it? And yeah, they're not exactly following that to a T anymore either. So
No, I
yeah,
don't think so. I think they've moved on
yeah,
as people do, and
yeah,
that's the thing about everything that we do, right? Generally,
yeah,
without being too philosophical,
mhm,
like people move on, things move on,
yeah,
like things progress. Depending on which side of the fence you sit on, you either see it as progress or you see it as something as decline.
yeah,
Um, I think most of the time it's progress
yeah,
for most people, but the design industry, I think, from the things that I've seen, there's lots of noise around it being in decline
mhm,
from people. I don't necessarily see that myself. I'm maybe because I'm a half glass half full type
yeah,
person. I see the progress and just the evolution rather
mhm,
than okay, this is in decline. This is things are just changing, right? We've moved, as you say, from having dispersed teams where you've got teams of product designers. There you go. I'm still in the newer mode of
yeah,
thinking, but now we're talking product designers, people who are more well rounded and all rounders. Whereas before it was very siloed. UX, research,
yeah,
UI, they were different things. And like, there was a time where if I spoke to someone as a potential customer of mine and they said, "Oh, I want someone to do UX, UI," I'd say, "Absolutely not. You need two people."
yeah,
Now I'm saying actually, yeah, we can find you someone. You just got to find out where the balance is in terms of what you want, someone to
yeah,
do ultimately. But what's your opinion on sort of how things have gone in the design industry over the
yeah.
last couple of years?
I mean, I think for me, I'm actually quite energized by the movement right now. I think it's incredible, exciting time for people that just love making product, and I think that's the bit that we maybe lost along the way is that for those that truly love building great products, there's never a better time to be in because the accessibility to be able to build stuff is so much more readily available than it's ever been. So
Yeah,
I think that to me is the bit that's really exciting. As a real kind of maker at heart, it's like actually I can actually create what I have in my head now, and that is super powerful, I think. But I think if we're realistic, like the design industry's always been in some sort of existential crisis.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a time where like design's like, yeah, cool, like we're all sorted, like
We're at the top.
yeah, it's
Who are engineers? What are they needed for?
exactly.
Yeah,
So like I think, there is an element of, well, cool, yes, there is I think what is challenging for folks at the moment is the rate of change
yeah,
and the speed of which things are moving because I sometimes feel that as well. Like I said, I'm loving this. I feel like I'm trying to read and consume and try every new tool and every new way of working out there. It's exhausting as well.
yeah.
And I think like people are feeling that as well. So I think part of it is around, well, how do you stay enough up to date so that you're not, you don't become irrelevant, but also like how do you give yourself a little bit of a break around some of this as well?
Mm.
Because there is just so much out there. Yeah.
And why do you think then that designers tend to feel undervalued?
I think because in some organizations it's seen as a bit of a kind of cherry on top.
Yeah,
Like it's not like fundamentally about solving problems. And I think that's what design is to me, and I think for a lot of people that got into design, it's because you wanna solve actual problems. It's creative thinking,
yeah,
and I think for a lot of people, that often gets done in other parts of the organization,
yeah,
and people are handed finished solutions, not problems. And I think that's the bit that really, I think, people struggle with,
yeah. Okay.
for sure. So, yeah, I think there's probably something around that, around, like, how are people actually able to show up and do what they feel is their job?
So it's that misunderstanding and misalignment between business leaders, C-suite, whoever it might
Yeah.
be, to say this is what we actually need versus what people in design can actually do.
Yeah, totally. And I think like design for me is probably one of the few roles. I'm not really thought about any other roles. So it's maybe the only role
Yeah,
is where you need to fight to do your job.
yeah.
And I think that's really
Why
interesting.
is that?
I don't know, because, like, when you've got organizations that are like, "Yeah, we need to find the best designers," and you'll see this as well in your line of work, like, all the effort that goes into that, and you find the best, you bring them in, and you've not created the environment for them to succeed. You're like, "Well, what a waste of everyone's time and money."
Yeah, huge money.
Like, it's just absolutely nuts. So, yeah, like, it's such a crazy thing of like, yeah, we need this and we need that, but then we don't enable them to actually kind of deliver on that as
Yep.
well. So, like, I think that's a big part for us as design leaders as well, is to lean into that and create the right environment for people to succeed.
And you've probably seen like the good, the bad, the ugly in organizations as a design leader. You've probably seen both sides of that, right? Places that are set up to give you success, but
Yeah,
also places that are not set up to give you success,
yeah,
potentially set up to fail. So, how, as potentially a design leader, can you go and try and engineer the success side of things so that you're putting things in the right place, giving people the opportunity to go and do their job, so it's not such a constant battle? What
yeah.
can we do?
Well, I mean, I think a great example for me when I joined OVO, it's fair to say that it was a big transformation project. The
Mhm.
team had gone without much love for a bit of time. No fault to anyone in particular, but that's the reality of. I joined with the mandate from my boss at the time, which was, "Can you fix design?"
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's a brief, isn't
Okay.
it?
Cool. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I could do that."
Problem.
Yeah,
Something to solve. Something to
exactly.
fix. Good.
So yeah, but like what unpack that. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And I think for me there was it was at multiple different levels. Like I think initially the gut was like we need to get the team, we need to sort the kind of performance part of the team. We need to be able to kind of deliver on what we're doing. But actually, we also needed to I needed to spend quite a bit of my time at the other side of things, trying to connect what design can deliver against the business strategy, and how do we translate what we're doing against that.
Mhm.
So like a lot of what I do, and even still, is around that translation piece.
Yeah.
And like how do we connect this back to what the business cares about? Because for us, a big thing is around cost to serve, around complaints, around customer satisfaction. Those are the things that the business are measuring. And if we are sitting here in a design team banging on about the usability here or the heuristic thing here or whatever else, it's like, yes, that's important, but how does it ladder up?
Yeah.
Because if we don't show how it ladders, then it just becomes again another kind of design piece that doesn't actually that no one really cares about. If we're honest,
Yeah.
we care about it; it is
Yeah. Yeah.
important. But if we can't tell why,
What's the value?
then what's the value
What's
in
the
it?
measurement?
Yeah,
What are the metrics?
yeah,
Rather than, I think design is often measured on outputs and like screens, flows, journeys, things like that.
yeah,
But actually, you should be thinking bigger picture of how does it affect the
yeah,
business metrics, the business outputs that then generate revenue, that make it easier for the customer to go in and purchase whatever they're purchasing or
yeah,
go through the journey that they're
yeah.
going on.
I think quite often, when you ask people what's design accountable for in a business, no one can answer that.
Yeah.
Which is very telling. Like, what is product accountable for? Oh, well, there's these KPIs, there's these metrics, there's the P&L, there's whatever. Like, totally, the business person looks after this, or engineering is responsible for this, security. Like, you can go through it
Yeah.
very easily. What is design actually accountable for? People stumble.
What do you think design's accountable for?
I mean, for me, it's about the overall quality of the experience.
Yeah.
Like it's can the customer do the job, and does this help us translate what we're doing into a business outcome
Yeah.
that we're trying to deliver
Yeah.
fundamentally? And I think for me, like we all probably play a part in that. But design can really, I think, really kind of help with shifting that.
Yeah, it definitely can turn the needle. And I
Yeah,
think we talked about like tools and things that you're using
yeah,
now with the day and age of being able to build things and do things quickly as well. You can take things from your mind and put them onto I was going to say a piece of paper there. You can put them onto a piece of paper, but
yeah,
onto a screen more
yeah,
realistically these days.
yeah.
What tools are you using? What are the must-haves these days?
I think we're leaning heavily into the AI prototyping space.
Yep.
So we've been on a journey. It started off with kind of Figma Make because it was very accessible to the team, given it was, people use Figma type
Yep.
thing. I think like a lot of people, we've had hit and miss experiences. More recently, a bit more hit than miss, but we've kind of hit the limitations, I think, around that. And then the next natural piece for us was around like how do we use Cursor? Like we've
Mhm.
seen Cursor being adopted by many design teams in the industry as this kind of intermediary between like design and code.
Yeah.
And that kind of prompting environment and that kind of safe space around that felt like a next kind of step for us. And we're very much in the kind of piloting of that. I think at the same time, Claude Code and more kind of like terminal based tools is exactly kind of where we're leaning into. And I think that's probably where the future is for us, to be honest. So yeah, we're getting much closer to the metal around like around what we're creating.
Nice. And if we fast forward maybe like 5 years from now, what things do you think designers are doing day to day now that they won't be doing in 5 years? Like, where's it going? Big question. Sorry.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
big question.
Get your
Um,
ball out.
I think when you think about like all the manual tasks that folks are doing right now, whether that's synthesis of research or whether that is like hand cranking all the copy for things or hand cranking every single screen or detail, I think all of that type of stuff will be significantly reduced.
Mm,
And I think more importantly, what they will be doing, I guess, rather than maybe what they won't be doing is probably thinking more like a product person, a
mm.
builder.
Yep.
And I think that it comes back to this piece around judgment and taste being key skills. For me, when I'm hiring designers, like one of the biggest skills or the things that I've always looked for is that curiosity,
Mhm.
and that kind of ability to explore a problem properly. I think they'll be doing that way more than they'll be doing today because
Yeah.
they'll have the time and the space to do that. Um, but I think there also needs to be that shift in that mindset as well for some people that maybe think that design is screens.
Yeah.
Because actually, like we're seeing a lot more like non-screen based interfaces, like voice and all the rest of it continues to be kind of on the rise. So, how are we thinking more about the problem space?
Yeah. No.
That's where I expect people to be spending more of the time.
It's really interesting because you talk about like screening people as designers for people who are solving problems, right?
Yeah,
I think if I, and again, completely made up stats here, but if I probably did an overview of all of our customers and clients and the things that they ask for across design, product, software engineering, the three core pillars
yeah,
of our service that we offer, and said to them, what are the main things that you look for in good/great people in insert discipline,
yeah,
they'd all say problem solvers, whether that's engineers, product managers, or designers.
yeah,
So, do you think it's fair to say that that's really what we need to be looking for when we're looking for great people
yeah.
in our organizations? We need to test for people who are problem solvers. And then, how do we do that? How do you test for someone who's a problem solver? How do you find out that curiosity?
For me, I think you don't always see that through your traditional portfolio reviews.
Mhm.
Because I think in a world now, anyone can create a super slick portfolio. You can run your stuff through ChatGPT or any other tool and spit out a formula type thing, and it's like and it feels formulaic. I think you really need to dig into like what were the challenges
Yeah.
around this. Like for me, like when you're interviewing a designer or anyone, I'm less interested in like the little bits that you did and how you followed that process. I want to know about the stories behind it because that's the interesting bit because nothing was ever super successful.
Mhm.
But we all talk about these like examples like it was like yeah, we did this and we got this and
It's all
it
perfect.
was all perfect. It was easy. You know,
Call bullshit on it. Yeah.
exactly. That is not the case. Like, there was this person that you disagreed with. You fell out with this person. Like, you struggled to get buy-in for this. Like,
Yeah.
these are the things that we want to hear about. And like these are the bits that are really unique to you and what you bring to it. So I think like focusing on those types of conversations, and teasing that out as opposed to like, cool, you followed this strict process, like because nobody does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think someone once said to me the difference between someone who's a senior and not a senior
yeah,
person in design. We're actually talking about design, but it could be related to anything. Is someone who's been through those challenges and those problems, and they can articulate this was the challenge and this is how we solved it. So they've been to battle
yeah,
already.
yeah,
They know how to handle certain situations. Whereas someone who is a bit more green in the industry,
yeah,
they just won't have been to battle and they won't have known how to solve those problems. They can probably do it, but they
yeah.
won't have done it
No.
before. And I
And I
think that
think
was a
that's the
really
bit
good.
that separates the good from the great there
Yeah,
as well. Like, and the more experienced you are, the more you've probably faced these things, and the level of complexity and the problems that you've had to overcome
yeah,
are only bigger as
yeah, yeah.
well. So, I mean, I think back to some of the things that maybe I'm solving at the moment. The approach I'm taking is not that different to maybe how I would have done it as a more kind of junior designer, but I think the learning across there is has been the key thing to build on that to be able to solve some of those problems.
So, why do you think then, in the industry as it is today, that there's an issue, and it's not a massive issue, but there is an issue with ageism, whereas some more sort of senior designers, they've got experience, they've been battle hardy, um, they've gone through lots of different things, but they're being shelved because they're older or whatever it is. I don't know why. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at it, I probably can't point to that many older people that are in the design profession,
Mhm.
that are not in senior leadership roles. Um, and I think when you look at that, it's interesting why. I think from a lot of peers and folks that I'm speaking with, I think there's a lot of people that are tired and are like, actually, I'm not willing to kind of go through this for much longer,
Yeah.
or almost like taking themselves out of this world.
I've seen that. I've seen plenty of that
Yeah.
actually. People
Um,
who I've worked with for years, they've suddenly gone, "Ah, do you know what? I'm just going to do something else."
Yeah, totally. I guess I'm seeing a lot of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, in terms of when it comes to like designers and thinking about the hiring piece, I guess yeah, generally I haven't really given that a huge amount of thought as
Mm.
to as to why those folks are maybe not being hired as much. I think when you look at right now, like I'm seeing quite a big gap in hiring more juniors
Mhm.
and people fresh out of college and that type of thing.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
always been a problem as well, I think.
it has, and I almost think that right now, and you know, I face this challenge personally, but I think right now, if you can go and hire a bunch of grads that are kind of super green but super enthusiastic and are growing up with all these new tools and ways of working, um, chances are you're going to be able to turn around some pretty awesome things.
Mhm.
And you'll be able to teach a bunch of other things. And I
Yep.
think maybe the slightly older side of things, like how are you keeping up to date and how are you keeping yourself relevant?
Yep.
Because that design process and those tools that you used are moving and you need to move with it. And I think there is a bit of a resistance there, not just from older folks by any means, but generally, like how do you keep yourself relevant
Yeah.
in this ever changing world?
It's that resistance to change, isn't
Yeah,
it? Because I speak to people, and sometimes they're still sort of stuck using tools like Azure, which is a great tool. Don't get me wrong, Azure has its purpose, but I
good
think
for forms.
if you're
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you're purely wedded on that and saying that's the be all and end all, Figma's rubbish, it's not a proper prototyping tool, you're not prepared to change, and that's probably where I see that sort of gap
Yeah.
appear.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's perceived as ageism, which I think is sometimes slightly misguided because it's not the fact that they're older, it's just the fact that they're not prepared to change
Yeah.
their ways. And there are plenty of like older people that I know, mostly contractors actually, if they're still practitioners,
Mhm.
but they keep up to date with different tools. They're trying different things with AI, and
Yeah.
shock they keep themselves in
Totally.
contracts.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that's the bit, especially with the AI kind of shift as well, is that it is quite divisive
Yeah.
as well. And definitely there are people that are not leaning into that space that I have no doubt that in 2, 3 years, maybe even less than that, will be unemployable.
Yeah.
Because they won't have the skills that businesses are looking for. So like that's a real worry. And that's something that I always thinking about my team around how do we keep our teams relevant? And like, how can we bring people on that journey? And it's not just a case of, well, use AI. Like, why should we use it? What should we be doing? What
Mm.
does good look like? But that is a real worry that I sit with around how is this team and people around us going to be employable in the future in a world that's changing every single day?
Do you think AI gives design an advantage?
I think so. I think it enables people to create stuff that they've never been able to create before.
Mm.
A lot of the blockers to things has been around maybe the engineering or the coding side of stuff. That's now fully accessible. Like like everyone, I'm vibe coding every idea I have, whether I should or not is another story.
Yeah.
Um, but that's been a real liberating experience of like I have this idea, I can now create it. Like it's not going to
Yeah.
sit in a Figma file. I can create something and ship it to the app store or put it on a website and get people using it. Like that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, like that level of accessibility to these ways of working is huge. So yeah, I think that's a real interesting piece for me in there.
And you've done a fair bit of work around building design systems, and
Mhm.
traditionally design systems have been created so that things can be easily reused, and you've got a structure and a framework for the rest of the business and team to work from. But AI can change some of that, can't it? Because it can be a bit more dynamic in terms of
Yeah.
the approach. So how does that change things, do you think?
So for me, design systems, they were kind of born out of largely designers wanting consistency
Yeah,
and wanting control around how things are delivered. I was there as a designer wanting the same thing.
yeah,
That's kind of where it came from. But I think if you look at it, like it is a tool that really helps accelerate teams to deliver things. And how do you get that idea? How do you go from idea to delivery much quicker? So for me, it's about efficiency and it's a cost saving piece.
yeah,
Because it enables people to focus on the real problems than anything. And I think again, thinking about AI, like a big part of what inspires me is around how do you go from that idea to validation,
yeah,
whether it is a good idea or a bad idea, but how do you get the signals? And I think a little bit like design systems, the AI piece is enabling that. So, like what I've kind of been spending a lot of time on right now is like how do you teach AI or how do you enable AI to be able to use the design system? How can it be a bit more of a kind of co-pilot with you as
okay,
well? And that like how do you work with AI
yeah,
to realize these ideas? And you want to do it in a way that's consistent with brand, that's consistent with the rest of the experience, and all the rest of it. You want all that good consistency levels there and the quality. But we're almost creating design systems for AI, like on top of design systems. Like
yeah,
right now, the experience that I've had is that we've got so many different markdown files that it's just full of rules to tell AI how to interpret the design system.
right,
It seems super inefficient, but it's where we are, and
yeah,
we're going through that. And who knows, like in a few months, years, whatever, it might look very different. I'm sure it will. I hope it does.
yeah,
Uh, we cannot just live on these markdown files like
yeah,
right
yeah,
now. Like it's nuts. But like again, we're it's a huge step forward to where we were, like even like 6 months ago, type thing as
yeah,
well. So we're probably achieving about, I don't know, 80% levels of consistency with AI in our design system
yeah,
right now, which is pretty decent.
yeah.
Like there's some designers that don't achieve that. So like, it's pretty good.
Sufficient,
Yeah.
right? And if you were starting from scratch tomorrow, today,
Mhm.
whenever, building a design system again, knowing what you know now about sort of AI and the evolution that's coming at a rapid pace,
Mhm.
where would you start? Like, what would you start by doing?
I mean, I think I'd probably start with a bunch of basic rules around the foundational pieces, like
Okay.
your token level, essentially.
Yeah.
I'd start at that level. And equally, what can you leverage off the shelf? Whether that's frameworks or things like that as well. Like the classic one right now of like Shad CN and using Tailwind are the ones that are really kind of delivering across the board. So how would you plug into this? Because you probably don't need to create it from scratch.
Yeah.
As much as the designer or the maker in me is like, "Oh, it'd be great to start from scratch." Like, of course it would be.
Yeah.
But again, how do you move quickly? Why are you doing this? You're doing it to be able to take away some of that pain that you've already got. So how can you get to that quicker? So yeah, I would be leveraging stuff that's off the shelf and focusing on that token level piece to enable enough consistency or enough delivery. And I guess what is enough to you and to someone else might vary, but yeah, if I was starting from scratch, that's probably how I would approach it.
It's interesting because you said the maker in you sort of would probably want to start
Yeah.
from scratch. And I think actually most designers that I know would be more excited about if I was telling them about a project of we're building a design system from scratch, we're doing this like completely greenfield, it's an exciting project to get involved in than something where we're taking something off the shelf. They'd probably be more excited by the former, as in the building from scratch. So
Yeah.
how do we balance things out so that people are still engaged in the work they're doing, but also using the efficiencies that are available?
Yeah. I mean, I think it also comes back to like the signature experiences. Like what makes your experience uniquely yours?
Mhm.
Why does it feel like your brand, your product, that type of thing? So where do you go deep? Because otherwise everything will just look exactly the same. And you see that from in AI PCs right now. You just generate anything, and it's all bland. I
Yeah.
think that's where
Looks the same.
it does. It looks
Yeah.
the same because also it's trained on all the same stuff. Of course,
Ah,
it
yeah.
does.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a pattern matching game,
Yeah.
and like you're just going to end up with the same stuff. So like I think that's where the role of design is again needed even more than ever. That level of taste and craft, because where are you going to sweat the details?
Yeah.
What is going to make something unique? And how do you solve that in a really interesting, creative way? Like these are things that you're not going to get out of AI
Yeah.
at this point in time. But
Who
who
knows?
who knows?
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows? But I think that to me is like the where like we're seeing designers really succeed as well. Those that have that high level of taste and craft and thinking to be able to challenge what is essentially AI slop that comes out a lot of the time.
Yeah, and that's most of, the things that we see is, as you
Yeah.
say, AI slop. I think that's a nice way to put it,
It is,
being
it is.
kind.
Yeah, but exactly, but I mean, that is it's so easy though, and in a world where anyone can make anything, it's
Yeah.
like, it really comes back to that, should you? Like, just because you can, should you?
Well, no, definitely
Um,
not, I
yeah,
think.
and I think that's the thing, like, I was joking with a friend the other day about, like, some app stuff that I've been doing, and they were like, "Oh, the app store's just gonna get flooded with rubbish." I'm like, "Well, thanks," but for that.
Appreciate it.
Exactly, yeah. But it's true
It's
though.
true.
But
Yeah, yeah.
but true. And like even like how do you think about like how is Apple, Android, whoever thinking about how to maintain that quality bar when anyone can create anything? Because you are just going to end up with stuff there.
It is so easy. I mean, even I who am traditionally not very tech savvy, I'm more of a turn it off and on
Yeah,
type guy, but used Lovable for the
yeah,
first time the other day and built a couple of websites in half a day.
yeah,
It's not hard. They're not great websites, bear in mind, but they're good enough.
yeah.
I think I probably paid someone a couple of £1,000 to build them
Yeah,
12 months
ultimately.
ago.
Yeah. But what takes something from good enough to great?
Yeah, and
And I
that's
think
where you need people.
that's where you need the design
Yes.
part, and I think that's where the companies that invest in that will see that,
Mm,
and you'll see that kind of huge leap
yeah,
because everything else will probably look, feel, work roughly the same or okay, and it might be okay, and it might be fine for that product or company to be like that. But the real differentiator, I think, will be those that really invest in that and do something a bit different.
yeah, nice. And you mentioned earlier about designers being able to become almost more product led, more product management sort of focused in their approach.
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely spot on from the things that I see, and I think this is a real opportunity for designers to not sink into the shadows, but to step into the limelight a bit, because you
yeah.
can now the lines have always been slightly blurred between product and design, but I think they're even more blurred now, and you
Oh yeah,
see the best product managers becoming more design and engineering focused, and then the best designers becoming more design and
yeah.
sorry, product and engineering focused by typing in prompts to create code and things like that, and then the best engineers will try and become a bit more product and
Yeah.
design focused. So
I mean, there's the classic meme doing the rounds right now of the Spider-Man scene where they're all pointing at each other, like,
yeah, yeah.
and it's like, we don't need you, you don't need you, don't like, and it's just like, but it,
I've missed that one.
yeah,
Where's
oh,
that been?
go check it out. But yeah, like they're all just pointing at each other, like, yeah, product doesn't need design, design doesn't need engineering, engineering doesn't need product. Like, do we need anyone anymore?
No, not
Uh,
no, just let AI do it all. Take
exactly.
over.
But I think for me, it's about like how can we lean into these overlaps
Yeah.
because that's super exciting, and I think when you start seeing teams get smaller as well, like that's a real trend I'm seeing as well, that because you can work much tighter together and you can achieve so much more, like a product manager, designer, and engineer working super close. Now I'm not saying that that's the ratio that will be there forever, but certainly these smaller kind of teams can deliver way more than they
Mm.
ever used to be able to. So that's also, I think, quite a shift that's coming or is happening right now.
Definitely, and as I say, it's an opportunity for people to step up, and if they are truly problem solvers,
Yeah,
because you've got problem solvers in all of those three disciplines. But
uh,
if the designers that are there are proper problem solvers, they
yeah,
can then go and get something shipped really
yeah,
quickly. They don't, as you say, they don't have to wait for the Jira ticket to be
yeah,
read by someone in engineering, which might take 2 weeks. They can go to a customer, even if there's no product person in between, and say, "Is this what you're talking about?
yeah.
Created this. Does that make sense? Does that work for you?"
Totally.
Yeah, it does.
I think that's where we're really leaning into that prototyping space for that
Yeah.
reason. Like, how can we test this idea? And how can we make it believable rather than a set of like flat clickable prototypes that, if we're honest, are never really felt properly
Well,
like
that's
like
part
a
of the
product.
problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
With design is
yeah,
that when you take a flat clickable prototype to someone who's not a designer, they look at it and they go, "Yeah, I don't get
yeah.
it.
Or
Like, what's this?"
they touch the screen and it doesn't work, and you get the blue flashy boxes because that's where you're supposed to click.
Yeah,
They feel
yeah,
stupid because they didn't know that, but
yeah.
how would they have known it because they didn't see it? And it's just like the whole thing's just so artificial. Like I think for me, it's like how do you can get things in front, real things in front of people to get that feedback much quicker?
Still look like they should
Yeah,
actually be out there live in the market.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then the other bit on top of that is that how can you pull in real data as well? Because,
yeah, okay.
we joke slightly about the kind of the Azure kind of thing, but like, being able to pull in real data into these prototypes and make it feel a bit more real as
Mhm.
well is also a kind of big step forward. And I guess like thinking back to some of the kind of Azure days and stuff like that, is that some of those things you were able to do and we've
Yeah,
kind of lost a little bit because we've got very static ways of working now and just linking screens and objects together.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you so thinking of that sort of comment that you made there of getting real data into the platforms because I'm sure there are some sort of privacy sort of regs that would restrict the ability to do some of
Yeah.
that sort of thing, which is why most times people use dummy data so it doesn't get lost in some sort of data
Yeah.
leak or anything like that.
Yeah.
But how can we try and circumnavigate that? Do you think?
I mean, I think there's probably still an element of using dummy data.
Yeah,
Like, do you need to use like live customer information? Probably not, and you
yeah,
probably shouldn't.
yeah,
Just to be clear.
yeah,
Uh, but actually, like, what does that data set look like? It's
yeah.
not about having perfect data because actually there'll be loads of gaps in the actual systems. Like, if I think about some of the challenges we've got at OVO right now, maybe we're missing a postcode, maybe we're missing information about this type of meter, or
Hmm.
maybe we're missing this type of information here. Like that to me is if you've got data that simulates those experiences, all the edge cases, that's real data, as opposed to you've designed for the happy path again,
Hmm.
and you've got the perfect set of data. Because actually, that's not the case. When people are calling us or using their app or whatever else, like things go wrong because there's a lack of data and things. And I think you can simulate a lot of that now more easier than you could before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked a bit about when you're hiring for designers, looking for people who are problem solvers, going beyond the portfolio, looking for someone who can tell the story. What are the things that ultimately become a straight no for you if you're going out and hiring in the market?
Yeah,
When you're looking at portfolios or when you're speaking to people, depending on sort of where you get to in the process, like what are the things that you go, that's an absolute no go.
yeah.
You're not coming to be part of my team.
Um, I'd say visual craft right now. They don't have a decent level of visual craft, and I think we've done ourselves a disfavor in the industry over the years because we've often referred to design being this kind of visual layer on top of everything else, and I kind of talked a little bit about that before, but honestly, I think we need designers to be able to create good-looking things as
Hmm.
well as solving problems. Like it's both, and I think we've lost that along the way. And I think things like a lot of the UX boot camps and the overhiring that we did through COVID and all these kind of things like has taken away from like we need to create some beautiful looking and working things.
Yeah.
Like nice things sell. No one. I'll use the example of no one really goes out intentionally and buys an ugly jumper.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
happens, um, but no one goes out with that intent.
Yeah.
And like nice things sell, and you see that.
Isn't
So
that
like
subjective though? Like nice things because, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I think is the phrase. So one person the ugly jumper, right?
yeah,
Someone actually looks at the jumper and goes, I love the jumper. It's great. Another person goes, it's not for me.
yeah,
So
um,
how do you get past that subjectivity in the visual craft of design?
yeah. I mean, I think there's always a level of subjectivity in there, and I think you
Yeah.
just need to acknowledge that,
Okay.
as well. What I like and what someone else is like is going to be different. But there are some real kind of basic kind of parts of design, like your kind of core like Gestalt principles, if you
Yeah.
like. That your layout, your rhythm, your spacing, your typography, all the things that just make something feel well crafted.
Yeah.
And I think individually, is a customer going to notice that? Probably not. but all of these things add up.
Mm.
And when things just start to feel a bit off, that's when the trust levels go,
Yeah.
or when people feel that this doesn't feel quite right. Like, and I think it goes back to that piece around what is those signature experiences as well. Like when you look at some of the the best design led companies, like the classic kind of Apple, for
Yep.
example, like what makes that feel like Apple? One of the things is like the smallest detail around how they treat border radius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's such a tiny detail, but if that was slightly off, and you see that in the latest version of Mac OS,
Mm.
those border radiuses are wild,
Right.
and I do
Okay.
wonder like how the hell did that get through? But like like those details matter,
Yeah.
and I think for me, like when you're hiring designers, you want someone that really cares. And cares about the detail
Mhm.
and sweats the detail when no one's looking. So like even if that's just how they organize their Figma file or how they put a presentation together, like what's the level of care that they bring?
Mhm.
Because if they're not bringing that care to those levels of artifacts, then how is that actually going to show up in an interface or something you're shipping to a customer?
And how do you test for that without having a portfolio that details sort of everything, going through this was the process, this is what happened, this is what went wrong, measurable outcomes, whatever it might be. Is there a way to test that level of detail with someone?
I mean, I think you see it in the first interaction. Like,
Yeah.
so you see, like, I don't know, potentially it's someone's CV that comes through.
Yeah.
Like, can they lay out their CV? Does it look like a considered piece of work? Because that's the first impression. What's their choice of words as well? Because words are as much design as the pixels. So how are they thinking about constructing things? And again, in a world where you've got AI to help you with some
Hmm.
of this that maybe wasn't a core skill set, there's almost no excuse.
Yeah.
So how are you communicating?
Spelling,
Yeah, spelling,
simple stuff.
real simple things, formatting, like
Yeah.
all of that type of thing. Like that really matters, and that is a first impression that I think a lot of people don't think about.
No.
They'll fire over an unformatted Word doc and hope for the best, and
Or
like,
their LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile, but the downloaded PDF version,
yeah,
which I get sometimes. I'm like, that's not a CV.
yeah,
Just so you know.
no, or the LinkedIn doesn't match the CV, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, so you're not telling the story here. So like,
Yeah.
I think there's a bunch of first impressions where you've not really thought about how you're landing things.
Yeah. Okay. So people need to really make sure they're looking out for those things,
Yeah,
to showing that, because everyone says attention to detail, one of the things, and that always makes me chuckle when you say attention to detail, and you're like, by the way, you've spelt the wrong.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
And again, there's no excuse.
yeah.
And I say this, and I'm sure people watching this will be like, well, have a look at your LinkedIn. I need to have a look at it
Yeah,
after.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably
yeah.
full
Yeah,
of
don't look at mine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't look at
I'm
mine.
just judging everyone else.
Yeah,
That's
sure,
fine.
mine is full spelling. No. But I think like there is almost no excuse for these types of things right now, as well with the tooling that we've got available to us, and we've had spell check for long enough that like I think we're fine.
Although
Uh,
sometimes there may be the element of, with all the tooling that's available to us,
yeah.
throwing in the odd spelling mistake just to make it
Well,
seem more human,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, make sure there's no M dashes
No,
because
no M
yeah,
dashes.
I
That's a bane of my life. I
know.
think now ChatGPT has got used to the fact that I don't like M dashes. It comes back whenever because I use it for creative posts on
Yeah,
LinkedIn,
yeah,
because I can't bother to write them
yeah.
myself now. I just get it to do it for me, and it comes like saying, with no M dashes, here's your post. I'm like, brilliant, thank you,
Yeah, you
thank you.
finally got that bit.
Finally,
Yeah.
after the 100th time,
Mm,
whatever. But
I know.
yeah, and that is another problem that I see generally in all of the markets, is some of the CVs, and they start to look a bit uniformed, and people having problems sort of picking profiles apart,
Yeah,
even portfolios whereby they all look so uniformed, and they go, well, it all says the same sort of thing. Is this a carbon copy of someone else's, or
yeah,
like what should I do? Like, how do I pick these
yeah,
people apart? And especially if you've got, I think we've moved past the hundreds and hundreds of applicants coming through, because the market has sort of picked up and is now at fairly normalized levels across the board. But when you're having lots of applicants coming through for jobs that you're looking at, is trying to differentiate things that all look
yeah,
the same. Like,
yeah.
how do you do that?
I think a part of that is as well, like how do people stand out as
Yeah.
well? Like in
Okay.
in a bit of a crowded market there. Like I had a portfolio recently that I saw that had like a almost like a TikTok style kind of video that was per kind of each kind of case study.
Oh,
And I
cool.
was like, just it was a different approach.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, cool. I maybe I'll have a look at this. I'm not going to watch every single video because I don't have the time, but it was like a way of standing out, and that was like really key as well. So I think like how people can think about standing out is a key bit there as well, because otherwise everything does look the same
Yeah, okay.
as well.
So getting someone's attention. It's that interaction initially, isn't it?
Yeah,
That first impression, as you said, getting someone to actually like read it.
yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be going into the same file as everyone, which is maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, thinking about it almost a bit like a design project. Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Well, like the problem with your CV, or the problem that I think you're trying to solve with your CV is, can I get a conversation with a recruiter?
Hmm.
And then the next thing is like with your portfolio. And I was giving a friend some advice about this recently as well. Like, you don't need to have every single detail and case study in that portfolio. That's what the case study round is for.
Yeah,
So like again, this should be like, how do you get the eye of the hiring manager? How do you show that you're a good enough designer to get a conversation? So like at each point of the process, what's the problem that you're trying to solve?
yeah.
And how are these artifacts and things showing up for you and doing that work? Is such a key bit.
I'm always very conscious that I try not to give too much advice on like CVs formatting and like portfolios even like because I think actually it should be down to the individual, and as a designer you
Yeah,
should have your personality come through in the things that you're doing. The only thing I normally say is similar to you is like tell the story. That's
yeah,
what most people want to see, is telling the story. And I'd say I think what you were just saying just then was you don't need to have like 10 case studies,
no.
one or two.
One or two good ones in there, with enough depth that it shows that you can think,
Yeah,
and it shows off your craft, and then the rest we can fill in during a chat.
yeah,
Like you do not need to go into detail. As someone that I mean, I confess I don't read anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It feels weird. Like I don't write
Listen.
and I don't
Yeah,
read.
yeah,
But it's true. Like we're all so busy and we're all kind of used to kind of like quick, short, snappy, things.
yeah.
Like if you're going to send over a case study that is like 12 pages long, there's no way that a hiring manager is going to read that, because they're looking at however many other people at the
Mm.
same time. So how do you capture the attention? How do you land the key bits? And the rest can be a conversation.
You talked about the person who put like the mini TikTok sort of videos on the side
Yeah.
of the CV. What sort of other things? What's the best thing that you've seen in a portfolio or a CV that's really grabbed your attention?
Um, I think the thing that I've seen more recently is actual live work. So they've been able to, because of being able to vibe code and all the rest of it,
Mm.
being able to show links to actual kind of prototypes and experiences like that. That's really stood out to me. And again, a real signal that they are like kind of at that kind of more cutting edge of the technology side of things as well. So not just flat visuals,
Yeah,
not just videos, which of videos of products, the actual product, the actual feature. And I think as always, like if you can see people's thinking and like what they've discarded and how they've got to that solution,
mm.
that's a key bit as well. Because too often, I think we're all a bit guilty of this. Is like, oh, first idea, cool, that's done, move on. Because there's pressure there to ship, or there's pressure there to move on to the next thing. But how have they got to that decision, and how do they show that in their process
Yeah.
is such a key bit.
You talked about like boot camps
Yeah.
and juniors coming in, getting grads through. Do you think degrees in design and UCD still have relevance?
I don't know, and I feel a bit of bias here because I never properly studied design.
Yeah.
Um, I did a part-time college course, so you could certainly say that I did a level of study, but I didn't go to university.
Yeah.
And so it didn't do me any harm.
So we
But
take that as a no, they're
yeah.
not relevant.
So no, I don't think so. Like I think it has its place for some of the kind of core theory and stuff like that. But honestly, like there nothing beats real experience.
Yeah.
And for me, like starting out at kind of like 17, kind of 16, 17 in an agency, like learning the craft and learning by doing and learning by failing,
Yeah.
taught me way more than I ever got out of my college course.
And what would you suggest then to sort of any young new designers? They could be young, could
Yeah,
be old. We're
yeah,
not ageist here,
yeah,
but people who are new to design, sort of coming through. We said earlier it's difficult for designers to come through. We don't see many junior roles, entry level roles across the board in the market. So how can people position themselves to get some of that experience? What can they do to help themselves, other than going on a boot camp, which I'm not sure either of us really think is a great
yeah.
idea.
No.
So what can people do?
Yeah. I mean, not only is I think the quality of what you get out of those boot camps probably not that great, the cost for it is astronomical
And then
as
they
well.
tell you you'll have a job at the end of it, which is a load of
Yeah,
rubbish.
exactly. So like definitely no boot
Yeah.
camps. Um, I think by doing the work. Like, find a product, redesign it, have a point of view on it. Like,
Yeah.
take some, we've all got phones full of apps. Like, pick one of them and think, well, how would I approach this differently? What would it be like if we used the Spotify experience for Airbnb? Like, how would that feel?
Yeah.
And I guess start forming and having a point of view. And that really comes into that piece around that product thinking,
Yeah.
as well. Like, have a strong point of view. Like, obviously, be able to have that challenged. But starting with having a bit of a point of view and building up some experience around that. And I think just start by doing. Again, in a world where you can create things much more easily than you ever could, there's almost no excuse now. So like, and show the work, show the thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So just get out there, do some actual work, albeit sort of project work that you're not getting paid for, but look at it, have an opinion on stuff, build some case studies,
yeah.
go and show people,
Yeah,
make people
exactly.
clear.
And I think that's the thing of like just, speak to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Like, the power of cold outreach, it does work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've done it myself.
Yeah.
It's exhausting and you might have to contact like 400 or 500 people to get 3 conversations, but it does work.
Yeah.
And find that angle and find that way of like getting their attention and why they should speak to you. And I think like that perseverance is a skill that like we're all so used to just getting things really easily now. Like you're gonna have to do the work.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I think it's a
Good
real
people get
skill
hired.
that needs to be relearned, especially by a lot of people coming through in the market, in all markets, across all things we do. I think even in what we do in translating to recruitment, right?
Yeah,
Our daily job is ultimately going and trying to reach out to like 300 people and maybe speaking to three.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
having that perseverance is a really key skill to help you move forward in
yeah.
life. And in a world where there's so much noise, you've got to try and cut through it.
Yeah.
It's the main
And
thing.
I think part of that is like you're probably not going to go and create this generic message in an AI tool and then spam 300 people because
Yeah,
it looks like that.
yeah,
Like,
and it gets
it,
ignored.
yeah,
Shock.
exactly. You're like, well, I've contacted 300 people. Well, you haven't really. Like you've sent the same thing out. Like,
Yeah,
is it actually better to be a bit more choiceful about it
yeah,
and find like maybe say 10 to 15 key people and tailor something to them, and find ways of speaking to them
yeah,
as well. So like, I think that more considered approach, again, in a world where you can create things so quickly, and create the AI slop, like
yeah.
how do you cut through that as well? It's probably through being yourself, being human, and finding that real connection.
And we've talked then about junior people coming into the market, but what
Yeah.
about people leveling up, doing what you've done? So going from someone who's a practitioner,
Mhm.
operational, very hands-on, and you're a creative person by the things you've just said
Yeah.
previously, to then moving into that leadership role, which is a very different beast overall when you suddenly stop being sort of hands-on in the craft using the tools. So how does someone sort of elevate themselves to move into that head of design role, VP of design, call it whatever you will?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a real shift at the moment around what the expectations are of people in these kind of senior leadership roles. It used to be all about pure people management. And I think we're kind of seeing a bit of a backlash on that for probably all the right reasons.
Yeah.
That there is an expectation, and there probably always should have been an expectation that there's a level of hands-on that's still required. So I think people that are practitioners thinking about maybe moving into kind of more leadership positions, there's there's almost more ways of doing that than ever. A route that was probably never always there before was well, you can still be an IC.
Mm,
You can still deliver work at a much more senior level and a much more level of kind of complexity in organizations. And organizations are loving that, because you're delivering value that's actually tangible. And I think the other part is around, okay, if you are going to lean into that kind of people leadership type role, um, how do you still connect back to the work? How are you shaping the work, shaping the outcomes?
hmm
It might not mean that you're any squad or whatever delivering work every day in Figma, but you're still accountable for the overall experience. And you can't do that without having a point of view, without being able to kind of show what goods looks like. And a level of hands-on is always going to be, I think, required. And I
Yeah.
think that's the bit we've probably lost over the years, is that we've transitioned into design leaders that that can't do any design anymore,
Yeah.
and it's like that feels a bit weird.
Feels like it's changing though. I think
Yeah,
when I see it amongst the team that we have, when we
yeah,
get requests for people to be design leaders, as you say, they're not going to be in the tools every single day.
yeah,
And hopefully hiring people who are better at using Figma than they are to
Yeah,
do all of the
exactly. Yeah.
prototyping work. That's the whole point.
Oh, yeah,
But
I mean, you don't
you
wanna
can
see
judge the
you don't wanna see
quality.
me in Figma,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I am slow, and I still rather go back to using Illustrator for most of the stuff because it's just much quicker. But, yeah, I mean, again, I'd be back in Flash if I could.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I was
yeah,
gonna say you'd
yeah.
be straight back in Flash.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily about that level of proficiency in
Yeah,
these tools and things like because the tools always change as well. But like how are you shaping the ideas and how are you shaping that experience? And equally, let's go have a debate about the rounded corners. Like, fine, like it's fun. But I think there's some people that have maybe lost that element of connection to design and why they got into it because they've almost got distracted. But I think right now we're seeing a shift in the industry, and I think it's quite exciting.
yeah, nice. It definitely. I mean, there's so much change going on
Yeah,
across the board.
yeah,
I personally think it's an exciting time, and as I said earlier, a time and an opportunity for people in the design industry to really level up and
yeah.
get that proverbial seat at the table that everyone's always craving for.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, be careful what you wish for,
yeah,
is what I always say. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I remember there was a boss of mine once said, when I was, "Oh, yeah, I really wanna be on this leadership team." I'm like, Be careful what you wish for." I got that position. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you were right, weren't
What
you?"
was it?
Uh,
It wasn't
uh,
wasn't what you wanted.
it wasn't I just think I was really exposed to really what was going on in the organization,
Okay.
and,
La 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 la.
yeah, yeah, like, yeah,
Yes.
ignorance is bliss,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but no, I think I mean, jokes aside, I think we all want to have a level of influence, and I think
Yeah.
that's when we talk about seats at the table and things like that. I think it really does come back to that influence piece, and almost going back to your question around like people that are looking to move into more leadership positions. It's all about influence, isn't it? It's about influence and communication, and like we're all probably somewhat bad at it in some ways. We're all probably finding working our way out through that, but those that can really kind of build that credibility through the way that they communicate, the way that they storytell, and the way that they can ultimately influence and change,
Hmm.
people and systems and teams around them. Like those are the folks that will always really succeed in those roles.
So we've talked obviously a lot about AI today, which is again no surprise to most people. It seems to be the basis of most of my conversations these days, and probably will be for a little while to come. Lots of organizations trying to implement AI into their ways of working, into their products, etc., but not always getting it absolutely right, and sometimes bolting things on and etc. We've also heard of horror stories of things that have not gone well. So how can organizations really, I suppose, qualify first and foremost, like what they should be implementing, and then go about actually getting some value from it, because
Yeah.
it's all about creating value rather than just doing it because someone said, oh, we should do this thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's such a key bit. Again, talking of memes and things earlier, like the classic thing as well around, well, the CEO wants AI. We want AI all the things, and it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
before we know it, we're doing things but we don't really know why. And I
yeah.
think like that's a big part. I think that the approach that I've taken with this kind of transformation around like AI first workflows is like, why are we doing this? Well, it keeps coming back to me about how do we move from idea to validation, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but how do we close that gap. So everything that we're doing is really around that. So like that's our why. So I
Mhm.
think the first thing is, what is your why are you doing this? And if you don't know, go back and do the 5 whys exercise type
Yeah.
thing. um and then I think once you have got that, like one of the things that we've really invested in is a level of like baselining our AI maturity.
Mhm.
Like where do we want to be? Because I'm have a bit of a technical background. I love jumping into code and all of that type of stuff. I realize that the rest of the team isn't. And just because like I'm happy to spend my evenings and weekends playing around and tinkering with stuff, I know that the rest of the team aren't at that point yet.
Yeah.
So like what we actually had to do is meet the team where they're at. And that's meant actually real basics around what makes a good prompt.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I will admit, I once put into Figma Make with a screen, make this. That didn't really deliver what I wanted. Shock horror.
Yeah.
Um,
Spoiler alert. It
exactly.
doesn't
Yeah.
work.
That doesn't work. So, yeah. But like, what is our maturity around even just prompt engineering?
Yeah. Okay.
And thinking about how do you get things out of your tools like Gemini and Claude and other things like that first?
Just what most people don't know about
No,
the prompts, and I think most people, I'd say probably, I don't know, again, made up stat, but 90% of people using AI products don't know how to prompt it properly.
No, I mean, how many people are using ChatGPT and other things like this, like Google? Like so many.
Most of
Like
the time, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It's
I
nuts.
still do it as well
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes I
And I
do.
go,
Yeah.
"That didn't give me what I wanted. Ah, I didn't ask it properly."
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the skills that people are developing as well, as a way to articulate yourself.
Mhm.
And like that's a journey that I've been on as well, because like like make this doesn't actually does you don't get what you want. So like I think actually meeting the team where they're at has been such a key bit, and thinking about like what's that baseline, where are we, and where are we trying to get to, and thinking about the various different kind of streams or things within that. The other bits is like it's not all about shipping code. Like we've been using a lot of the tools for like kind of research synthesis, like using things like Notebook LM. I mean, a great thing to bring a repository of research together, to be able to create little kind of show reels of like the kind of podcast feature, or things like that, to be
Yeah,
able to
nice.
share around the business. Like there's things like that that we've been able to use as well. So I think it's about like almost exposing people to everything, and
Yeah.
then kind of seeing kind of where what sticks, but also like where do you really want to push on, and when is the time right for that as well. So like because what we've noticed is that those that have spent the time learning how to prompt, or focus on kind of refining the prompt experience, when they are putting this into things like Claude Code or whatever else, they're probably using way less tokens because they're being a bit more accurate as
Yep.
well. So there's a cost saving aspect
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but they're also getting what they want much quicker as
Yeah.
well. So like it for us, like that level of or that approach has been super key.
Yeah, nice. And it's
Yeah.
it's what do you think about those organizations that are resisting sort of the implementing AI into their businesses? So the other way round.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably need to ask why. Like again, like what is it? Is it fear? Like there's naturally there's a lot of fear around like will this take people's jobs? And I think the way I'm thinking about it is it might take some of them. Like I think we should be honest. Like let's not say that AI is not going to take anyone's jobs type
Yeah.
thing. But it's also going to create so many new jobs.
It's the
Like
natural evolution.
yeah, we've got like a super senior conversation designer in our team that like that role didn't exist
Yeah.
however many years ago. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the person that we've got is awesome. They're a borderline engineer as well.
Yeah.
And like we just wouldn't have had that. So like there's so many things coming out, and like to organizations that maybe are slightly resisting about it, is it fear, or what's that reason? I guess it's hard to say like what my advice would be without actually having that conversation. But I think it's probably digging into like what's that underlying piece around it.
Yeah.
Is it a security thing? Because that's real as well. Like you don't want people taking all your customer information and dumping it into a public, LLM. When
I
people have
think there's
seen
a
that,
lot of
like
that, isn't
there's
there?
probably a lot of that.
Large
Like, yeah,
organizations, finance,
um,
etc.
highly regulated industries like OVO is as well. Like you need to be careful. Like
Yeah.
there's certain things. There's approval processes and things that big organizations and regulated industries need to have.
Yeah.
So that's fair. Um, but it's possible. But like, how do you think about that? And how do you bring? I think for me, a lot of this is around what's the culture that you're creating
Yeah.
around this, because that's probably the hardest bit. Like how do you shift that culture? And I think for me, a lot of it keeps coming back to that that learning culture. How
Yeah.
do you keep people learning? Because it's moving so quickly, and how do you keep them adapting? So that'd be part of the advice, I would say.
Nice. And if you could go back to the start of your career and giving yourself a piece of advice to get you to where you are now, what would that bit be?
Oh, good question. What would I say? I mean, I'd probably say invest in your future network,
Okay.
um, and building that future network before you need it.
Yep.
Because everyone thinks about who their peers are, who's around them, and we almost get obsessed with like, oh, such and such is this job, they're doing this type of thing, that you almost forget that actually those people are not going to help you get your next role.
Yeah.
It's going to be the people that are above them, and what happens when they move into those more senior roles. So like I'd say building on that future network, whether you're a grad thinking about your first role, or thinking about actually now I'm moving from kind of IC into manager or whatever else, or now I'm looking at like a VP level role. Like, okay, cool, your audience now is probably the CEOs in the C-suite.
Yeah.
So how are you building those networks? Like that to me would be the thing to not get caught out by, that you don't have the network when you need it.
And that's where I see it all
Yeah,
the time. It's the number one piece of advice that I give to people.
yeah,
Say I'm cautious not to give too much advice, but I think I'm probably well qualified to say about building a network, because that's
yeah,
what we do. We monetize our networks,
yeah,
but ultimately you should go and do it for yourself if you want to really elevate yourself.
yeah,
Have those conversations, reach out,
yeah,
not feels a bit weird to say, but not rely on recruiters too much because
Yeah.
there's times and places where people don't want to use consultancies and agencies to find people.
Yeah. But like probably the best roles that I've had or the best conversations I've had about roles have not come through the roles coming on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
That doesn't happen. It's through
so rare.
conversations.
Yeah,
And it's through, whether that is a recruiter conversation, like building that network of recruiters.
yeah.
Or equally, is it through like, other people that people you've worked with, that type of thing. Like it's always through those conversations. It's never because that perfect job pops up on LinkedIn. I think it did once for me, but
It does happen because,
yeah,
but it's rare. You're
yeah.
absolutely right. Like
Uh,
most of the time, it's through the conversations you're having with people,
yeah,
building that network. I love that piece of advice.
yeah.
Absolutely sage. So, Fergo, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I think we've probably put the world to rights
Yes.
on all things design today,
Mm.
and some real nuggets of wisdom that I'm sure people will hopefully take something out of.
Awesome. No, thanks so much for having me. It's been really great. Thanks.